The board laughed when the CEO said she took advice from the gardener. Then he reached into his pocket and showed them the one thing that silenced the room forever, his old FBI badge. He left a life of hunting the nation's most dangerous criminals, to push a lawnmower, to raise his daughter alone. This is the story of why he walked away and what happened when his past walked back in. His name is Alex Carter. For 3 years, he's been the quiet gardener at Nexacorp's Silicon Valley campus, a single father raising his young daughter. But before that, he spent 12 years as a decorated FBI field agent, hunting organized crime. He traded his badge for a trowel after his wife's death, choosing peace over pursuit. Until the day the CEO, in a room full of mocking executives, called him just the gardener and asked for his opinion on a security breach they couldn't solve. 5 a.m. Alex Carter is already awake, packing a lunchbox for his 7-year-old daughter, Chloe. His routine is simple, built for silence and stability. But the scars on his hands tell a different story, one written in gunpowder and blood, not soil and fertilizer. 12 years with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. A career built on hunting financial predators and cyber cartels that bled billions from corporations. Alex wasn't just an agent. He was a specialist in behavioral analysis and forensic accounting, the man they sent when a case was too complex, too delicate, or too dangerous for a paper trail. He met his wife, Alina, during a joint task force. She was a brilliant data analyst for the Securities and Exchange Commission. They built a life on solving puzzles together. Then, 4 years ago, a routine drive home turned into a 3-car pileup on the Bay Bridge. Alina was killed instantly. Alex walked away with a broken wrist and a shattered world. The Bureau offered him grief leave, then administrative duty. But the statistics are brutal for law enforcement after profound loss. A study from the National Law Enforcement Foundation found 1 in 5 officers seriously consider leaving the profession after a major personal trauma. For Alex, the calculation was simple. The job demanded a 24-hour on-call commitment, a constant state of readiness. Chloe needed a father who was present, not a ghost haunted by cases and carnage. He resigned with full honors, sold their condo, used his savings to buy a small house with a yard in a quiet town 30 miles from Silicon Valley. He took the first job that offered peace, head groundskeeper for the sprawling Nexacorp campus. The work was physical, predictable, and silent. He traded tactical briefings for irrigation schedules, forensic reports for pH soil tests. To Chloe, he was just dad who knew how to make things grow. Meanwhile, at the epicenter of that campus, Nexacorp was in turmoil. Under its young CEO, Maya Thorne, the tech giant had pioneered Ether, an unhackable data encryption platform. Its entire market valuation, $85 billion, rested on that promise of absolute security. 3 weeks before the board meeting, that promise shattered. Ether's source code was stolen, not through a digital breach, but through a breathtakingly old-school human compromise. A senior engineer was blackmailed, his family threatened, and he physically copied the core algorithms onto a drive during a graveyard shift. The board of directors, a collection of venture capital titans and industry legends, was apoplectic. Their stock had plummeted 15% overnight. The press circled. The FBI's cyber division was investigating, but progress was slow, mired in jurisdictional fog and digital dead ends. Maya Thorne was desperate. At 34, she was the youngest CEO in the company's history, and the board's patience was a thin, cracking ice. She had to show control. She had to find a solution they couldn't see. And that's when she started talking to the gardener. It began innocently. Maya took walks to clear her head, often through the campus gardens, a serene oasis Alex maintained with meticulous care. She'd see him working, a man of few words but calm, observant eyes. One afternoon, frustrated, she voiced a problem aloud, almost to herself. How do you find a leak when you can't see the pipe? Without looking up from the hedge he was trimming, Alex said, "You don't look for the leak, You look for the mold. The water always leaves a mark somewhere else. It was a simple analogy, but it struck her. Their conversations became a strange, secret ritual. She'd outline a problem in abstract terms, a pattern of suspicious access logs, an anomaly in network traffic. He'd respond not with technical jargon, but with principles of human behavior, of pattern recognition, of how predators think. He told her to look for the grain of the crime, the natural direction a threat would flow based on pressure and opportunity. Unknowingly, she was being coached by one of the FBI's former top behavioral profilers. His advice led her security team to flag a series of irregular financial transactions in a subsidiary company, a potential money laundering trail linked to the blackmail. The board, however, saw none of this. They only saw a CEO spending time on the lawn with a landscaper. Whispers turned into sneers. "Maya's getting horticultural therapy," one board member joked. Another called it a crisis of leadership. They demanded she stop the eccentricities and listen to the expensive consultants they'd hired. The tension peaked at the quarterly strategic review. In a sterile, glass-walled boardroom on the top floor, Maya presented the new leads. When pressed on how she'd found them, she made a fatal, honest mistake. She said, "I consulted someone with a unique perspective on criminal patterns." "Who? One of our forensic accountants. An external cyber intel firm?" asked Richard Vance, the board chairman, a man whose fortune was older than the internet. Maya hesitated. "I've been speaking with Alex, the groundskeeper." The room erupted in disbelief, then derisive laughter. Vance leaned back, a cruel smile on his face. "The asterisk gardener. You're taking security advice from the man who mows the lawn. Maya, this is precisely the kind of unstable judgment we warned you about." The humiliation was public, surgical, and complete. Maya felt her credibility evaporate. In that moment, seeking to deflect, to share the burden of this unorthodox trust, she made a decision. She pressed the intercom on the table. Her voice was tight. "Please ask Alex Carter to come to the boardroom. Now." She didn't know what she expected. An apology, perhaps. An explanation that he'd once studied criminology. She had no idea that with one phone call, she had just yanked a dormant volcano back into the world it had fled. Down in the maintenance shed, Alex was washing soil from his hands when the call came. Chloe's drawing was in his pocket. He looked at the phone, then at the quiet order of his tools. He knew what this was. The laughter from the top floor had a way of drifting down. He took a deep breath, dried his hands, and reached for the old, worn leather wallet he hadn't opened in 4 years, tucked behind a box of spare sprinkler heads. He didn't know why he brought it. A reflex, maybe. The same instinct that made a former soldier check the exits in a room. He walked into the boardroom, the smell of freshly cut grass still on his clothes, a stark contrast to the room's sterile, air-conditioned wealth. All eyes turned to him, curiosity, contempt, boredom. "Alex," Maya began, her voice strained. "The board has questions about our consultations. Could you explain your background, how you come by your insights?" Richard Vance chuckled, not even looking at Alex, addressing the room. "Let's not waste time. We appreciate your work on the hydrangeas, really, but perhaps you should get back to them." That's when Alex's calm, green eyes settled on Vance. He didn't speak. He simply reached into the pocket of his work pants. He pulled out the weathered leather wallet, its edges soft and rounded with age. He placed it on the immaculate glass table with a soft asterisk click asterisk. He opened it. The gold FBI shield caught the cold corporate light gleaming against the faded leather. The bold letters, the iconic seal. Silence doesn't just fall, it shatters. Every breath in the room stopped. The mockery on Vance's face froze, then melted into pure, uncomprehending shock. Maya's hand went to her mouth, her eyes wide, darting from the badge to Alex's placid, dirt-streaked face. Alex finally spoke, his voice quiet, steady, and colder than the room's climate control. "My background, Mr. Vance, is 12 years hunting people a lot smarter and more dangerous than your boardroom consultants. I left to raise my daughter after my wife was killed, but I never forgot how to spot the mold. The silence in the boardroom was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the HVAC system. Richard Vance stared at the badge as if it were a live snake coiled on the glass. The gardener was a Fed. The joke was on them, and the punchline carried the weight of the United States government. Alex closed the wallet, the sound a soft, final click. He didn't put it away. He left it there, a golden anchor in a sea of stunned faces. Maya Thorne found her voice first, but it was barely a whisper. "Alex, you were FBI. Special Agent, Cyber Division, Financial Crimes and Counterintelligence." His tone was matter-of-fact, as if listing the botanical names of the shrubs outside. "I resigned 4 years ago. My credentials are a matter of public record if you know where to look, which your security consultants apparently did not." Vance finally moved, leaning forward, his earlier arrogance replaced by wary calculation. "Why are you here, mowing grass?" "I'm raising my daughter," Alex said, and the simplicity of the statement made the room feel shallow. "The Bureau's schedule is 24/7. After my wife died, my child needed a parent, not a pension, so I chose her." He cited the statistic without knowing he was citing it, living proof of the 1 in 5 officers who leave after profound loss. He'd traded the badge for bedtime stories, and he'd believed it was a permanent trade. But Maya was already seeing the shattered pieces of her world reassemble into a new, startling picture. The cryptic advice about mold and grain wasn't folk wisdom. It was the distilled insight of a federal investigator who'd spent a decade inside the minds of criminals. "The leads you gave me, the financial trail and the subsidiary, follows the pattern of a funnel account," Alex finished. "It's not where the money goes in, it's where it pauses. You look for the hesitation, that's the mold." The board was no longer laughing. They were listening with the intense, predatory focus of people who recognize a new, valuable asset. Vance cleared his throat. "This changes the context. Agent Carter." "Mr. Carter," Alex corrected softly. "I clocked out." "Mr. Carter, we have a crisis. A theft that threatens this company's existence. The official investigation is sluggish. You have insights, we need them." Alex looked at Maya, seeing the desperate hope in her eyes, and at the board, seeing only cold utility. He thought of Chloe, of the quiet life they'd built. He shook his head. "My insights are for keeping begonias alive. You have the FBI Cyber Division. Use them." He picked up his badge wallet and turned to leave. As his hand touched the door handle, Maya spoke, her voice firmer now, cutting through the corporate fog. "They're not coming, Alex." He froze. The phrase was an echo, not from this room but from the darkest nights of his old life. It was what they said when a situation was too compromised, too dangerous for a standard response. "Backup, not coming." She continued, rising from her chair. "The official investigation is stalled because the breach points to an insider with high-level access. Every consultant we hire, every protocol we change, the threat adapts. It's like they're reading our playbook. You told me to look for the mold. The mold is inside this building." Alex turned slowly. The gardener's calm was gone, replaced by the agent's acute, assessing gaze. He scanned the room, not seeing suits and titles but potential vectors, motivations, tells. "You think the board is compromised?" "I think," Maya said, holding his stare, "that someone in this ecosystem is feeding information to whoever blackmailed my engineer, and I have no one left to trust." The personal firewall Alex had built around his new life trembled. This was no longer about giving abstract advice. This was an active, hostile penetration of a secure entity, the very type of puzzle he was built to solve. And it involved a personal betrayal, a poison within the walls, a scenario that had always triggered his deepest professional instincts. Vance stood, attempting to reclaim authority. "This is a serious allegation, Maya. We have protocols." "Which have failed," Alex stated, his voice cutting through Vance's bluster. He was back in the room not as a groundskeeper but as a specialist. She's right. The sophistication of the initial blackmail, the precision of the theft during a single shift window, the subsequent evasion of your digital forensics. This isn't a lone hacker. This is a directed, intelligence-fed operation. You have a mole. The word landed like a bomb. A mole meant treason within the corporate tribe. It meant every email, every meeting, every strategy was potentially exposed. Alex's mind began racing, against his will, falling into old patterns. You said the engineer was blackmailed. What was the leverage? Maya nodded to her tablet. Images of his children taken from inside his home, delivered to his private server with a timer. No fingerprints, digital or otherwise. Intimate knowledge of family routine. Access to a home network. That's not a random scrape from the dark web. That's targeted reconnaissance. Alex's eyes locked onto Vance. Who knew about the engineer's work schedule on the Ether project? Who had access to personnel files with family details? Vance paled. The senior leadership team, human resources, the board oversight committee. A pool of about 40 people, Alex murmured, including everyone in this room. Another silence, thicker now, laced with paranoia. Colleagues eyed each other with sudden, veiled suspicion. Alex knew he was hooked. The problem was a live wire and he'd just grabbed it. He made a decision, the terms non-negotiable. I'll consult for 72 hours. I need full, unfiltered access to the security logs, the internal audit trails, and the personnel files for your leadership and security teams. I work alone and I report only to CEO Thorne. You, he said, looking at the board, will act normal. You will not discuss this meeting. You will not change your routines. Any deviation will be a signal to your mole. Vance bristled. You expect us to take orders from? I expect you to want to save your $85 billion company, Alex said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. The people who did this aren't playing for stock options. They're playing for control of an encryption standard that could blind every intelligence agency on the planet. This stopped being about corporate espionage the second they threatened a man's children. This is now a national security adjacent threat. So yes, you will take the orders. He didn't wait for agreement. He looked at Maya. Set up a secure room, now, and cancel my lawn care appointments for the week. The transformation was complete. The gardener was gone. In his place stood a phantom from the FBI's roster, a man who knew how shadows worked because he had once been one. The first 48 hours were a blur of data. Alex sat in a dim, windowless security office, walls covered with timelines and network maps. He consumed terabytes of information, access logs, badge swipe records, cafeteria purchase times, even cleaning crew schedules. He wasn't looking for a digital signature. He was looking for a human ghost, a pattern of behavior that existed in the negative space. He found the first anomaly in the metadata of the internal emails sent to the board about the breach. The send times, when cross-referenced with the mole's hypothetical need for information, created a recurring 6-hour gap. 6 hours between the board being notified of a development and the external threat adapting. It was the mold. The leak wasn't live. It was batched, meaning the mole was likely only accessing and transmitting data at specific, secure intervals. His focus narrowed to a handful of individuals whose work patterns created that specific 6-hour window of opportunity. One name kept rising to the top, David Lyle, the chief security officer himself. A former military intelligence officer, hired by Vance 2 years prior to fortify Nexacorp's defenses. He had the access, the knowledge, and the perfect cover. But something felt too neat, a frame or arrogance. Alex needed to see the man to read the subtext. He arranged a meeting under the guise of reviewing physical security protocols. David Lyle was in his 50s, fit, with the calm, measured demeanor of a professional soldier. His office was orderly, patriotic, with photos of him in uniform. But Alex's eyes, trained to see the story objects tell, noticed one inconsistency. Among the photos of Lyle with military units and at security conferences, there was a newer, framed picture of him deep-sea fishing. On the boat's console, barely visible, was a high-end satellite communication unit, a model favored not by fishermen, but by private military contractors and intelligence operatives requiring off-grid comms. During their meeting, Alex steered the conversation to the breach. Lyle was polished, rehearsed. He expressed the right amount of professional frustration. But when Alex offhandedly mentioned the 6-hour reaction lag of the threat actors, he saw it, a micro-expression, a flicker of recognition, instantly suppressed. Lyle knew about the gap, not as an investigator but as someone who might account for it. The meeting ended cordially. Alex was now 90% certain, but he needed the why. Motive turned suspicion into evidence. He dove into Lyle's financials, which were clean. Too clean. Then he looked at Lyle's professional connections before Nexacorp. One name surfaced repeatedly, a defense contractor called Valkyrie Dynamics, a firm that had bid for and lost a major Pentagon contract that Nexacorp's Ether technology had subsequently secured. Valkyrie's CEO was a former Special Forces commander with known, murky ties to off-book intelligence projects. The picture crystallized. This wasn't industrial espionage for sale to the highest bidder. This was a targeted strategic takedown by a rival with state-level backing. Lyle wasn't just a mole. He was a sleeper agent, placed to sabotage a competitor and steal the crown jewels. The blackmail of the engineer was merely phase one. The end game was the complete, irreparable compromise of Ether, destroying Nexacorp's credibility and clearing the field. Alex presented his findings to Maya in the secure room, her face drained of color as he connected the dots. Valkyrie, they're a Pentagon partner. This is a silent war, Alex finished. And your company is the battlefield. Lyle isn't leaking information. He's conducting a controlled demolition from the inside. The stolen code is just the first explosive charge. They had to move, but moving against Lyle directly was fraught. He controlled the internal security apparatus. He would see them coming. They needed irrefutable external proof. Alex devised a gambit. They would feed Lyle a piece of critical, false information, a fabricated update to the Ether core that contained a hidden tracking beacon. If he transmitted it, they would have a digital lock on his off-grid comms and the recipient. Maya prepared the bait file. Alex oversaw its placement in the system, ensuring it would cross Lyle's path naturally. Then they waited, monitoring the system for any attempt to access or copy the file. 24 hours passed, nothing. Then at 3:17 in the morning, a flag went up. Someone with Lyle's credentials accessed the secure server, not to copy the file, but to delete a specific log entry, the record of his own entry to the building at 2 a.m. the night the engineer was blackmailed. He was cleaning his trail. He was getting ready to run. Alex's phone buzzed. It was the head of campus security, a man he'd befriended over years of early morning conversations. His voice was tense. "Alex, you said to call about anything weird. The CSO just ordered a full system diagnostics on the perimeter gates. Says it's a drill, but he's also got a duffel bag in his trunk. Looks heavy." Lyle was spooked. He was making his exit. Alex made a split-second decision. The tracking gambit had failed. Lyle was too careful. They couldn't let him disappear with whatever intelligence he still carried. He turned to Maya. "He's leaving. Now. We need to contain him on site. If he reaches his contacts, this is over." "Call the FBI," Maya urged. "And say what? A former agent, now a gardener, has a hunch about the CSO based on a phishing photo. They need time we don't have." Alex was already moving toward the door, the analytical phase over. The operative phase had begun. "I need you to trigger the fire alarm for the executive wing. In 90 seconds, it will lock down the interior blast doors. Keep him in his office suite." "Alex, what are you going to do?" He didn't answer. He was already in the hallway, not heading for the security office, but for the maintenance stairwell. He knew this building better than anyone, not its security plans, but its bones. The ducts, the service corridors, the unmonitored access points the blueprints forgot. He knew how to move through it like a ghost. As he reached the stairwell door, the fire alarm blared, a deafening klaxon. Red lights strobed. He heard the heavy thud of magnetized security doors sealing across the hallways. David Lyle was now trapped in the executive wing. But Alex Carter wasn't, because the gardener knew a way in. The executive wing was a maze of sealed corridors and strobe-lit panic. Alex moved not like an intruder, but like a man returning to a familiar haunt. He bypassed the locked main door to David Lyle's office by prying open a ceiling panel in a janitor's closet, dropping silently into a supply room next door. He could hear Lyle on the other side of the wall, not panicked but methodical. The sound of a drawer opening, the rustle of papers, the solid asterisk thunk of a small safe closing. Alex pushed the connecting door open slowly. David Lyle stood behind his desk, a compact travel bag open, a laptop halfway inside. He didn't jump. He simply looked up, his expression one of weary resignation, not surprise. The fire alarm's blare was muffled here, a dull pulse. The gardener, Lyle said, his voice flat, should have known. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous. You're leaving, Alex stated, remaining in the doorway. The mission's compromised, time to extract. Lyle's phrasing was pure intelligence jargon. He made no move for a weapon. You were good, Carter, the 6-hour lag, that was sloppy of me. I got comfortable. It wasn't sloppy, Alex said, stepping inside, his eyes scanning the room. It was necessary. You can only access your dead drop or make your secure transmission during a specific preset window, probably tied to a satellite pass. The gap wasn't a mistake, it was a constraint, which means you're not calling the shots, you're relaying. Lyle's jaw tightened, a confirmation. Valkyrie Dynamics, Alex pressed. They placed you here. This isn't about selling code. It's about neutralizing a competitor for a defense contract. You're a corporate saboteur on a military-grade payroll. A faint, humorless smile touched Lyle's lips. You see the tree, Carter, but not the forest. Valkyrie is a branch. The roots go deeper. He zipped the bag. You should let me go for your sake, for your daughter's sake. The mention of Chloe was a needle of ice in Alex's chest. His calm facade didn't crack, but his eyes turned to stone. Try that again. It's not a threat from me, Lyle said, holding up his hands. It's the reality of the people I work for. You stop me, they send someone else, someone less professional. You've made yourself visible. You think showing a badge in a boardroom was just a power move. It was a declaration of war to people who don't lose wars. They will burn down everything you've built to keep this operation intact. The alarm cut off abruptly, leaving a ringing silence. The lockdown would be over soon. Security would swarm the wing. The code you stole, Alex said, changing tack. Etha, you transmitted it already. Phase 1, Lyle nodded. The code is already being picked apart in a lab in Eastern Europe, but Phase 2 is what matters, the backdoor. Alex felt a cold dread. What backdoor? The one I built into the security patch that every Nexacorp server installed last month, Lyle said, a note of grim pride in his voice. A zero-day exploit buried so deep their scans will never find it. In 72 hours on my signal it activates. It won't just give us access, it will give us control. We can silently decrypt any data Etha has ever protected. Bank transactions, government communications, military logistics. Every secret entrusted to Nexacorp becomes ours. The company won't just be embarrassed, it will be responsible for the greatest intelligence heist in history. It will cease to exist. The stakes just exploded. This wasn't theft. It was a hostage situation on a global scale. The $85 billion company was just the collateral damage. You can't stop it, Lyle continued. The trigger is on a physical device, not on any network, and I'm leaving with it. He patted the side pocket of his travel bag. Alex calculated. The lockdown doors would disengage any second. He had no weapon. Lyle was undoubtedly armed. A direct fight was risky, especially with the trigger device in play. He needed to flip the script to attack the operation's logic, not just the operative. "They'll kill you, you know," Alex said, his tone conversational. "The people you work for. Once you send that signal, you're the only loose end that connects them to this. A former intelligence officer with a conscience problem. You're a liability the moment the job is done." Lyle's confidence flickered. It was the seed of doubt every deep-cover agent lived with, the fear of the very system they served. "I have guarantees," Lyle muttered, but it sounded hollow. "You have promises from people who lie for a living," Alex countered, taking a small step forward. "My daughter is 7. Your file says you have a son at Stanford. What do you think they'll do to him once you're a risk? They won't just burn my life, David. They'll burn yours too, for cleanliness." The use of his first name, the appeal to paternal instinct, it was a calculated strike. Alex saw the conflict in Lyle's eyes. The man was a patriot turned mercenary, but the core identity, the father, was still there. The magnetic locks on the hallway doors released with a loud asterisk clunk asterisk. Voices echoed, getting closer. Security was coming. "It's over, David," Alex said softly. "The extraction window just closed. You can walk out that door into custody, and you can help us defuse the bomb you built. Or you can walk out and be a ghost until your own people find you. But you're not leaving this building as a free man. Choose which prison you prefer." For a long moment, Lyle stood frozen, hand on his bag. The shouts were right outside. Then his shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him. He reached slowly into the bag's side pocket and pulled out a small, sleek black device like a high-end car fob. He placed it carefully on the desk. "The trigger," he said. "It needs a 48-character alphanumeric sequence sent via a specific radio frequency. The sequence changes every 12 hours. I have the current one." The office door burst open. Campus security officers rushed in, followed by Maya Thorne and a pale, shaken Richard Vance. They saw Alex, saw Lyle with his hands now raised, saw the device on the desk. "Secure him," Alex said, not taking his eyes off Lyle. "And get a FBI cyber-response team here now. We have a critical national infrastructure threat." As security led Lyle away, Maya rushed to Alex. "Is it true, the back door?" "It's true, and it's armed." Alex picked up the trigger device carefully. "He gave us this, but the clock is still ticking. We need the FBI, and we need to audit every line of code in that security patch." Vance stared, his earlier arrogance replaced by visceral terror. The financial loss he feared was now dwarfed by existential criminal liability. "My God, the lawsuits, the government will dismantle us." "Forget the lawsuits," Alex snapped. "If that backdoor activates, the government will seize every asset you have and lock you in a black site. Your only chance is full, transparent cooperation. You need to call the director of the FBI yourself, right now, and hand over the keys to the kingdom." The boardroom titan was completely out of his depth. He just nodded, mute. In the chaos, Alex's phone vibrated. It was the automated alert from his home security system. Front door camera, motion detected. His blood ran cold. He tapped the live feed. The image was from his porch. A woman in a delivery uniform stood there, holding a large, flat package. But her posture was all wrong, too balanced, her eyes scanning the street, not the doorbell. And the delivery van idling at the curb had no company logo. Lyle's warning echoed in his head. "They will burn down everything you've built." "I have to go," Alex said, already moving toward the door. "Alex, what is it?" Maya called after him. "They're at my house." He didn't wait for a response. He ran, not to the parking lot but back through the maintenance corridors to his shed. He threw open his locker, not for his tools but for the old, heavy-duty steel box at the bottom. He keyed in a combination he hadn't used in years. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a compact 9mm handgun and 2 spare magazines. A relic of his old life, legally registered, a last resort guardian he'd hoped never to touch again. He checked the load, chambered around, and secured it in a concealed holster at the small of his back. The weight was alien, a dreadful familiarity. He called his neighbor, Mrs. Gable, an elderly woman who sometimes watched Chloe after school. "Hello," her frail voice answered. "Mrs. Gable, it's Alex. Is Chloe with you?" "Why, yes, dear. She came over about 20 minutes ago, said she forgot her key. She's in the backyard with my dog. Is everything all right?" The decoy. They'd lured Chloe out of the house. The delivery woman was a cleaner, sent to plant surveillance or worse, to wait. "Listen to me very carefully," Alex said, his voice steady but urgent as he sprinted to his truck. "Do not answer the door for anyone. Do not let Chloe leave. Go into the basement right now and lock the door. Don't come out until I call you on this number again. Do you understand?" The gravity in his tone cut through her confusion. I understand. We're going now." "Good, go." He disconnected and called the local police, identifying himself as a former FBI agent reporting a credible, imminent threat to his child at his home address. He gave descriptions. Then he slammed the truck into gear and tore out of the Nexicorp lot. The 30-minute drive was a nightmare of red lights and crawling traffic. Every second was an eternity. He used the time to think. Lyle was in custody. His capture would have triggered an emergency alert to his handlers. This move on his home was a retaliatory strike, but also a tactical one. They wanted leverage. They wanted to trade his silence or Lyle's release for Chloe's safety. He pulled onto his street, tires screeching. The unmarked van was gone. A local patrol car was just arriving, its lights silent. Alex parked haphazardly and was at his front door in seconds, his key in hand, his other hand under his shirt, resting on the gun's grip. The porch was empty, no package. He pushed the door open, his senses hyper-alert. The living room was undisturbed. Chloe's backpack was on the couch, but on the kitchen table, centered perfectly, was a single, plain white envelope. He approached it, ignoring the police officer calling from the doorway. He used a pen to slit it open. Inside was not a letter but a photograph. A high-resolution, telephoto image of Chloe and Mrs. Gable in the neighbor's backyard, taken from a distance. It was time-stamped 40 minutes ago. On the back, written in neat block letters, "A conversation is overdue. Check your garden." Alex's eyes snapped to the backyard. His garden, his sanctuary, his workplace. He told the police officer to secure the house and went outside. He walked past the raised vegetable beds, the compost bin, the tool shed. He saw nothing out of place. Then he looked at the old oak tree in the corner. Hanging from a low branch, swaying gently, was a small black plastic box about the size of a smartphone. A cellular trail camera, the kind hunters use. It was pointed directly at his back door. They hadn't needed to break in. They'd been watching for how long, days, weeks, since he'd shown the badge. He took it down. The memory card inside was gone, replaced by another slip of paper, a phone number, and a message: "Call, alone, or the next picture won't be so peaceful." The threat was no longer corporate or even national. It was profoundly, terrifyingly personal. They had found his center of gravity. They had drawn a line from the boardroom directly to his daughter's swing set. Alex Carter had spent 4 years building a wall between his past and his present. In that moment, staring at the empty camera housing, he realized the wall was gone. They were already inside, and the only way to get them out was to walk back into the darkness he had left behind. Alex stared at the phone number on the slip of paper. Every instinct screamed to call the FBI, to mobilize a tactical team. But the message was clear: alone. They weren't asking for a negotiation. They were testing his resolve. They wanted to see if the gardener would break cover completely, if the father would override the agent. He made the call from a payphone at a deserted gas station 3 towns over, a lesson from his old life. The voice that answered was digitally altered, calm and synthetic. "You took something that belongs to us, Agent Carter. We want it back." "You have my attention," Alex said, his voice flat. "What do you want?" "David Lyle and the trigger device. You will facilitate his release from local custody within the next 4 hours. In return, we forget your name and your address. We vanish. And if I don't, then we introduce ourselves to your daughter properly." The line went dead. It was a classic squeeze play, but Alex had been the squeezer more often than the squeezed. He knew their playbook. The demand for Lyle was a feint. They didn't want him back. A compromised asset was a liability. They wanted confirmation that the trigger was still secure, and they wanted Alex out in the open, distracted, chasing an impossible task while they executed their real plan, activating the backdoor remotely through another means. He drove back to Nexacorp, his mind working in 2 parallel tracks. One track focused on Chloe, now under the protection of a friendly FBI family liaison, moved to a safe house. The other track focused on the code. Lyle had said the trigger needed a specific radio signal, but what if the backdoor had a secondary activation protocol? A dead man's switch, or a timer linked to Lyle's capture? At the Nexacorp campus, the atmosphere was transformed. The FBI's cyber response team had taken over an entire floor, a humming hive of federal authority. Maya Thorne, looking exhausted but sharp, met him. "They're auditing the security patch line by line. It's a monster. 50,000 lines of code." "Have they found it?" Alex asked. "Not yet. It could be anywhere. A single line disguised as something else." She looked at him, really looked. "Your daughter." "She's safe for now." He didn't elaborate. "I need to talk to Lyle now." In a makeshift interrogation room, David Lyle sat with 2 FBI agents. He looked diminished, the professional polish gone. Alex dismissed the agents. He sat across from Lyle, placing the small black trigger device on the table between them. "They contacted me," Alex said. "They want you back." A flash of hope, then suspicion, crossed Lyle's face. "They won't take me back." "No, they won't. They want you to think they will, so you stay quiet. They want this." Alex tapped the device. "And they want to keep us looking at it. You said it needs a 48-character sequence. What's the fail-safe? What happens if you don't send the signal?" Lyle was silent. "Your son is at Stanford," Alex continued, his voice low. "They showed me a picture of my little girl. You think they won't do the same to him? The only way he stays safe is if this whole thing ends here. Now, with the backdoor dead, tell me the fail-safe." Lyle closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were clear, resigned. "There is a secondary protocol. If the primary signal isn't sent within 96 hours of the last successful handshake, the system interprets it as my compromise. It sends a ping to a backup server. That server holds the activation sequence and transmits it automatically. It's a dead drop in the cloud." Alex's heart sank. "When was the last handshake?" 20 hours before you caught me." "They had just over 3 days, 76 hours. Where is the backup server?" "I don't know, truly. It's a randomized, encrypted cloud location. The address changes. The ping from my failure will find it." It was an elegant, ruthless design. Even capturing the asset wouldn't stop the timer. Alex stood. "You need to tell the technical team everything. Every architecture detail, every line of code you touched. You helped them find and kill this thing, and I will personally testify that you cooperated. It's the only card you have left to play for your son's future." Lyle nodded, defeated. The patriot in him had been corrupted, but the father was still reachable. Alex left the room and found the lead FBI cyber agent, a woman named Chen. He relayed the new countdown. The audit intensified, but searching 50,000 lines for a ghost was a needle in a digital haystack. Then Alex had a thought. He went to Maya, the security patch, who approved it, whose signature was on the deployment order. She pulled up the records. The CTO, the head of product security, and the Board Oversight Committee, Richard Vance. Vance, the board chairman who had mocked the gardener, the man with the most to lose financially, but also with the authority to greenlight a system-wide update without deep technical scrutiny. Alex remembered Vance's terror in the office. Was it guilt? Or was it the fear of a smaller crime being discovered amidst a larger one? He requested the access logs for the patch's development server around the time Lyle would have inserted the malicious code. The logs showed a cascade of approvals, and one curious late-night access by a user with high-level privileges from an internal IP address registered to the board conference room. The timestamp was 2 a.m., weeks before the patch went live. The user ID was generic, but the physical location was specific. Alex and Agent Chen went to the conference room. They examined the dedicated computer terminal there, used for presentations. Its security was lax, more for convenience than protection. Chen performed a forensic scan and found a keylogger buried in the system. It had been capturing every keystroke for months. They extracted the data and found what they were looking for: a login session to the secure development server, initiated from that terminal. The username and password belonged to a mid-level engineer who was on vacation at that time. His credentials had been stolen and used from this room. Alex played a hunch. He pulled the building's security footage for that night, 2 a.m. The camera outside the conference room showed a figure entering. The image was grainy but clear enough. It was Richard Vance, alone, carrying a briefcase. Confronted in his office, Vance broke immediately. He wasn't the mastermind, he was the weak link. Valkyrie Dynamics had approached him a year ago. They presented evidence of his secret offshore accounts, his undisclosed conflicts of interest. They promised to make them vanish if he simply ensured a certain security patch was approved without the usual vetting. He thought he was cutting a corner, not planting a bomb. When he realized the scale of what he'd done, it was too late. They owned him. Vance's confession gave the cyber team a critical vector. They knew the exact date and time the malicious code was inserted. They isolated every code commit from that window. Within an hour, they found it. 3 lines of code, disguised as a routine error-checking function. A beautiful, poisonous piece of programming that would create a silent tunnel out of the most secure vaults in the world. The FBI techs wrote and deployed a kill switch, a neutralizing patch of their own. The backdoor was disarmed 72 hours before it would have awakened. The legal and corporate fallout was seismic. Valkyrie Dynamics was raided by federal agents, its ties to foreign intelligence units unraveling. Richard Vance was arrested for conspiracy and fraud. Nexacorp, under Maya's leadership, entered a deferred prosecution agreement by turning state's evidence and overhauling its security under federal supervision. The company survived, humbled and forever changed. For Alex, the work was done, but the personal cost was being tallied. He spent a week in the safe house with Chloe, explaining in gentle terms that Dad had to help some people with a very big computer problem, and that some not-so-nice people got upset about it. She accepted it with the resilient grace of children, more interested in the FBI agent who showed her how to fingerprint a teddy bear. The day the all-clear was given, Maya Thorne came to see him at his home. They sat in his now vigilantly monitored backyard. "I'm resigning from Nexacorp," she said. "The board is gone, but the culture is poisoned. I can't rebuild it." "What will you do?" "Start over, something smaller, something where the person trimming the hedges doesn't have to be a secret weapon to be listened to." She smiled faintly. "We owe you everything, Alex. The company, the clients, me." "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, we do, and I know you won't take a check." She handed him a simple business card. It was blank except for a phone number and an email address. "This is a direct line to the deputy director of the FBI. He asked me to give it to you. They want you back, Alex, not in the field, but in training, teaching the next generation of cyber agents how to think like you do, how to see the mold. It's a 9-to-5, full benefits, and it lets you be the dad you need to be." He took the card, the weight of it profound. It was a bridge between his two lives, a way to use the skills that defined his past to protect the future without sacrificing the present. He didn't say yes immediately. He took a month. He went back to gardening, but now for his own yard, for Chloe's school community garden. The simple work felt different, not an escape, but a choice. He finally took Chloe to the FBI headquarters for a tour, no longer a secret. She saw where her dad used to work, her eyes wide with wonder. 6 weeks later, Alex Carter walked into the FBI Academy in Quantico, not in a suit, but in clean khakis and a polo shirt. He stood before a classroom of new cyber agent trainees. He held up a picture of a lush, green, perfectly manicured corporate campus. "Your first lesson," he said. "Security isn't about building the highest wall. It's about understanding the ecosystem. The weakest point is never the line of code you can't crack. It's the person who forgot their key, the gardener everyone ignores, the pattern everyone dismisses as a coincidence. Look for the mold. The water always leaves a mark somewhere else." After class, he checked his phone. A text from Chloe with a picture of the tomato plant they were growing. It was thriving. He put the phone in his pocket and his fingers brushed against the old, worn leather of his badge wallet. He didn't carry it anymore. He didn't need to. The man who had placed it on the boardroom table to silence a room of arrogant men was gone. In his place was someone new. A teacher, a father, a man who had finally integrated the warrior and the gardener into a single, whole person. He drove home as the sun set, no longer fleeing from shadows, but carrying the light he had reclaimed. The quiet hero who never wanted to be one had finally found a peace that didn't require him to disappear. The story of Alex Carter is more than a tale of hidden badges and boardroom shocks. It's a reflection on the silent battles fought in plain sight and the extraordinary potential we often overlook in the people we take for granted. Consider the data. 1 in 5 police officers have seriously considered leaving their profession due to childcare conflicts. Highly trained professionals, like former FBI agent Sue Rudman, leave critical careers to prioritize family, trading prestige for presence. These aren't stories of defeat, but of recalibration, of individuals making strategic human decisions in a world that often values output over life. Alex's journey from the pressure of the bureau to the peace of the garden, and back to a role that married both, highlights a profound truth. Skills don't expire, they evolve. Purpose isn't a single destination, but a path that can bend without breaking. The same instincts that tracked cyber cartels helped him see the mold in a security breach. The same compassion that drove him to save his daughter drove him to save a company, and by extension, the secrets it guarded. His ultimate choice to teach at the FBI Academy represents a powerful synthesis. It's a path followed by many who find a second career later in life, trading the frontline for the classroom, where experience becomes a legacy. Studies show about 45% of workers who change jobs late in their careers finally achieve the flexibility they sought, finding fulfillment in passing the torch. So the next time you walk past a quiet coworker, a diligent cleaner, or a person in a uniform doing a job that seems ordinary, remember, everyone has a history. Every person is the sum of unseen battles, quiet sacrifices, and hard-won wisdom. The most valuable asset in any room isn't the loudest voice or the highest title. It's often the deepest well of untapped experience. The boardroom that day learned a lesson in humility, but the greater lesson is for all of us. Look deeper, listen more closely, because courage doesn't always wear a uniform, and the person with the answer might just be the one you stopped seeing a long time ago. Subscribe if you believe that every person has a story worth hearing, and that true strength is often found in the most unexpected places.